So the UFC just asked me, if not begged me, to come and save the lightweight division. You know, everybody nowadays seems to think that they earned the title shot. You know, we have Justin Gaethje calling for the title shot. We have Charles Oliveira calling for the title shot. Ilia Topuria, the whole top five. So in today's video, we're going to be breaking down and matchmaking the top 15 in the lightweight rankings. We got our TISM headphones on and we're going to just hop right into it. Starting with number 15, Ignacio Bahamondes. I think a good matchup for him is going to be Benoit Saint Denis. You know, Benoit has a good ground game, but he likes to entertain the stand-up for a bit too much, in my opinion. And Ignacio Bahamondes is just a sniper on the feet. I can see Ignacio Bahamondes potentially clipping Benoit Saint Denis and then see him flopping everywhere and finishing him on the ground with ground and pound. I think it's a really good move for the lightweight division, and especially if they're trying to push Ignacio Bahamondes. I mean, they try to push Benoit Saint Denis, you know, giving him the Dustin Poirier matchup, and then right after the Renato Moicano matchup. And hey, he just did not pass the test. He is not past the... He's not top 10 material just of yet. I mean, I feel like he is a bit too one-sided now. And Ignacio Bahamondes would definitely be a good test and something good for the lightweight division. Moving on to number 14, Grant Dawson. There is going to be one odd person out. You know, this top 15, you'd only have enough for 7 matchups. Grant Dawson is going to be that odd man out. I don't see him being able to beat anybody in the top 15, if we're being honest. Maybe, yeah, nobody in the top 15. Grant Dawson is just going to be that odd man out. I would potentially give him, you know, maybe like a Joel Alvarez, somebody to enter the top 15 rankings. I think Joel Alvarez would probably have a pretty good chance of beating Grant Dawson if he's able to defend the takedowns, because Grant Dawson was knocked out by Bobby Green in the first round. And it didn't even look like a power punch. He touched his chin and he pretty much toppled over. And Paddy Pimblett is currently facing Michael Chandler. You know, a big step up in competition. Number 12, Paddy Pimblett versus the number 7, Michael Chandler. But it is about damn time that Michael Chandler fights down in the rankings. This guy is always chasing. He is entertaining, don't get me wrong. But this guy cannot. He's been, what, 2-4 in the UFC? So, I mean, 2-2 in the UFC, so definitely not too great of a record. He definitely needs this step down in competition to maybe, you know, if you keep losing to the top level guys, they're going to feed you a lower level dude. And that's up to him to keep his spot in the rankings. And potentially, Paddy Pimblett can be entering the top 10 here. All right, moving on, we have number 11 ranked Rafael Fiziev. And at first I was going to say, you know, give him number 10, Renato Moicano. But then I did remember that Renato Moicano was just knocked out by him not too long ago. So I would say give Rafael Fiziev Mateusz Gamrot. You know, after their last fight, it kind of left a bad taste in people's mouth. You know, Rafael Fiziev did have a leg injury and he was out for quite a long time. And he just recently came back against Justin Gaethje. And you had Mateusz Gamrot parading around like he did something in the fight, you know, putting his hands up and acting like he knocked out Rafael Fiziev. And I know he is coming off of a loss, and you're probably asking, why give Rafael Fiziev a step up in competition after he just lost? But he just lost to number 3 Justin Gaethje, so there's no shame in that. It went kind of similar how it went down the last fight. And, you know, what would you give Rafael Fiziev? What, a Grant Dawson? Yeah, nobody's going to be tuning in for that one. Moving on up, we have number 10 ranked Renato Moicano. And he is coming off of a loss from Islam Makhachev. What was that, in the first round? It did look like he dropped Islam Makhachev, but everybody is saying it's a slip. So I'll take your guys' word for it. For Renato Moicano, I would like to see him versus number 9, Beneil Dariush. You know, I think this is a really good competition for them. And call me crazy, but I think that Beneil Dariush would be able to defeat Renato Moicano. I know he is coming off of 2 knockout losses, one against Arman Tsarukyan, I think in the first or second round, and then another against Charles Oliveira back in Canada about 2 years ago. So Beneil Dariush, has definitely taken some time off, let his chin recover, and it's not like Renato Moicano is a big power puncher either, so this is definitely a winnable matchup for Beneil Dariush. So number 8 and 7, we already matchmade Mateusz Gamrot and Michael Chandler. So number 6 is Dan Hooker, and he was originally supposed to fight Justin Gaethje, but unfortunately he did pull out due to an injury. And if you guys look at his Instagram, his whole knuckle looked just huge, swollen. He definitely couldn't have fought. He couldn't have toughed his way out of that one, in classic Dan Hooker fashion. But for Dan Hooker, I would like to see the rematch or the original bout with Justin Gaethje scheduled. I think that'll be a really good matchup, especially for 5 rounds. Now that we know that Justin Gaethje is able to take a hit, he did take a lot of solid shots in the Rafael Fiziev fight, the second one. And at first, when the fight first got announced, when it was originally on, I was leaning towards Dan Hooker because I wasn't too sure on how Justin Gaethje would look against, after getting knocked out by Max Holloway. That was the first time in his career that he went out cold. I know Eddie Alvarez did TKO him with that knee. He was still up, he was still flopping everywhere, trying to get himself back up. He had the chicken legs, but he was still functioning, not properly, but he was still up and functioning. But with Max Holloway, he was out cold. He was out for a while too. I remember them releasing the footage for afterwards, and it was just crazy. But now knowing that he can take a shot and his striking is as crisp as ever, I would probably lean a little bit towards Justin Gaethje in this fight. And this is also a good test for Dan Hooker and allowing him to enter potentially the top 5 if he does beat Justin Gaethje. Moving on up the card, we have Dustin Poirier, and he did announce that his last fight is going to be in Louisiana and that this was going to be his very last fight. That's already confirmed by Dustin Poirier. So I would say give him the trilogy with Max Holloway. Maximus Holloway, lightweight Max. This is going to be a different fight than the first two. The first one, he kind of just weight bullied him, and he was just a bigger guy. You could tell that Max Holloway wasn't bulked up properly for the lightweight division, and he was really just throwing him around like you throw around your little brother, But who knows how Max Holloway is going to be after the Ilia Topuria knockout. He could be a little bit more gun-shy. I know that's not Max Holloway's game. He's always constantly pressuring, putting on the pace, not letting you breathe, just trying to suffocate you with volume and then throwing in the sneaky power shots in between the volume punches. But like I said, he did just get knocked out by Ilia Topuria and then dropped by Justin Gaethje in his last fight. So maybe the mythical Max Holloway chin is finally starting to crack, and this would be a great matchup for Dustin Poirier for his retirement fight. And finally, for the number 1 contender fight, we have Arman Tsarukyan versus the number 1 Arman Tsarukyan versus Charles Oliveira. And this fight needs to be booked ASAP. You got to have it 5 rounds this time. I feel like we didn't see enough in the last fight. It was kind of boring as well. I mean, let's be honest. It wasn't that entertaining besides the submission that Charles Oliveira almost got. You did see Arman throwing some axe kicks, so that was pretty entertaining as well. But a 5-round fight, I believe, would be much different. As for who wins that one, if Arman Tsarukyan is able to implement his game like he was last time, I would lean a little bit towards Arman Tsarukyan. He is the younger guy. Charles Oliveira did look really good in his last fight against Michael Chandler. And I saw somewhere that Charles Oliveira was calling for a title shot. He was like, I deserve this. I deserve the title shot. I want to fight Islam Makhachev next. And listen, I know it's good to advertise yourself, speak up for yourself, but how is Charles Oliveira going to have a title shot off of a number 7 Michael Chandler that he's already beat before? So this is not something that we haven't seen before. He did put on a wrestling clinic against Michael Chandler, which was pretty entertaining to see. Not the classic Oliveira fight. He looks a little bit more reserved and willing to use his grappling a little bit more. So it also did look like he put on a little bit of size. I know Charles Oliveira is already a big lightweight. It will definitely be an interesting matchup if Charles Oliveira is able to keep it standing and use his wrestling like he did against Michael Chandler. And finally, we have the champion Islam Makhachev. And there's only one name I haven't said yet. I know he isn't in the rankings, but you guys already know what I'm about to say. Ilia Topuria is going to dethrone Islam Makhachev. I can tell you right now, Ilia Topuria is the one. He is the one that we've been waiting for. I know Islam Makhachev is actually a rather interesting Dagestani champion, so nothing against him. Every single one of his fights have been wars, and he's been a real active, just a solid champion overall, but his time has come. He needs to accept that fight with Ilia Topuria, guys. Ilia Topuria is the one. I can see the pocket boxing and in the exchanges. Ilia Topuria is going to be the hardest hitting fighter that Islam Makhachev has ever faced in his career. He's going to be able to present him with problems that no other fighter has before. He does also have a solid ground game because if you guys didn't know this, Ilia Topuria was actually a grappler that fell in love with striking. You know, he has a couple of submissions on his record, not against UFC caliber opponents though. He did get a couple of submissions on before he came into the UFC. And I'm not just a bandwagon, you know, I've been pretty high on Ilia Topuria ever since the Bryce Mitchell fight. I knew that there was something there. If you go back on my page, actually, you'll see me predicting Ilia Topuria to knock out Max Holloway and Volkanovski. So I've already had those two predictions. I've been saying that Ilia Topuria is going to be the guy, and he is that guy to come and save the lightweight division if he doesn't chase Islam Makhachev to welterweight. But they're probably just waiting to see what's going to happen with the Bilal Muhammad versus what's his name? JDM, that's his name. What happens with Bilal Muhammad versus JDM? You know, if JDM ends up winning, I think Islam Makhachev is going to end up moving on up, and then Ilia Topuria or maybe Charles Oliveira for the vacant belt. But I just hope that doesn't happen. You know, Ilia Topuria is that guy, and I can see him 100% taking the belt. But that's going to be all I have for you guys today. Let me know what you would do for the lightweight division. If you would disagree with me, if you agree with me, let me know down in the comments below.